2024 Conference Championship Review. Commanders, Eagles, that was the NFC. I picked the Eagles for good reasons. Home field advantage, better running game, better defense. But I thought it was going to be a close game. The Commanders start off well. They had that opening drive where they made multiple fourth down conversions. And I was surprised when they decided not to just keep going for fourth down. I mean, you can only push it so far. But they end up kicking a field goal. And that felt like a big stop for the Eagles defense. In some ways, I think it would have been a different game if the Commanders would have scored a touchdown first. I mean, traditionally, you'd say if you're a road team and you go down and get 3 in the playoffs against a good team, that's okay. I mean, as long as you get something. But the NFL's changed so much with teams being so aggressive and really using all 4 downs to their advantage to keep the chains moving. It's not complicated why the Eagles won. Again, surprised they won and put up over 50 points on the Commanders. Jalen Hurts played better than I thought he would. He was much better than the first 2 rounds. He looked healthier than the wild card in the divisional round. Made some big throws. And the Saquon Barkley run, the first play the Eagles had the ball. He may end up with the best individual season a running back has ever had when combining regular season and playoffs. I mean, we'll have to see what he does in the Super Bowl. But he's just pulling off these incredibly long runs over and over again, regular season and into the playoffs. And what advantage the Eagles have with that offensive line. I mean, can you remember any offensive line that compares just with their massive size as the Eagles do? I mean, what's the average weight on the Eagles O-line? It's not just that they're big. I mean, they're excellent linemen. When you just take the 2 tackles, Mailata and Johnson, it's a great offensive line. It is the best offensive line. The Lions have a very good offensive line, but this is the best offensive line in football. And it really does matter because, Barkley, as good as he is, I mean, he has huge holes that he's running through. And he seems to regularly get to the second level with ease. And that's why you get these long runs, because these defenses feel like they have to stack the box. But then you have these Eagles linemen just dominating the trenches, and it allows someone like Barkley with his speed and acceleration to get to the second level and then get, past the linebackers even. And that was one of the keys to the game. And just the question each week that keeps coming up in all these playoff games was, could the Packers stop the run? Could anyone stop the run game of the Eagles? Packers couldn't. Well, in some ways, the Packers did better than the Rams, and they did better than the Commanders, but the Commanders couldn't either. And between the running game, better game from Jalen Hurts, and the brotherly shove, or the push, it was too much for the Commanders, and it was a big loss for them, not having their full defensive line out there. And I will say Bobby Wagner is an all-time linebacker, middle linebacker. If we were to rank the top 10 middle linebackers in the history of the NFL, I think he belongs on that list. I'd say more the back part of the list. But due to excellence and longevity, he didn't have a good game. He looked older against the Eagles. I mean, again, you are, to be fair, dealing with that offensive line. Just a rough game for the Commanders as a whole. They got outplayed. They got outcoached. They really had no answer for stopping the Eagles, and they couldn't keep the Eagles in those third and longs. I mean, you've got to keep them in third and longs, and then if you can keep them to anything more than, say, 4th and 2. I mean, 4th and 2, 4th and 1 seems very manageable for the Eagles. Either if you're doing the push or if you're handing it off with Barkley. If you can keep it to, say, 4th and 3, 4th and 4, 4th and 5, then they're really going to think about it more and would consider punting. But the Commanders really couldn't keep the Eagles out of those very 4th and manageables. 4th and shorts, really. I mean, it's not, what the formula is for beating the Eagles. It is to keep them out of those easy 4th downs, those short 4th downs, and to keep Jalen Hurts in the pocket. Keep him in the pocket and make him read defenses, because once he gets past his first progression, he's a very average quarterback in the pocket. The thing he has going for him is, and I'm not trying to slight him or say he's not a good quarterback, but what keeps him from being one of the best is, he will lock on to a receiver, and when he does commit to a receiver down the field, say if it's his first read, they're mismatched receivers. I mean, Brown and Smith, in their own ways, one's more of a possession receiver, the other's more of a vertical receiver with speed. And you look at the Commanders, they had a very good season, and Jayden Daniels overall had a good game. Obviously, it wasn't as good as his other games. They just don't have the talent. And when we already talked about everything that went well for the Eagles' offense, it was the turnovers. I mean, we said coming into these games, who is going to be the team that turns the football over? I mean, the team that wins the turnover battle will win. And it was 4 turnovers for the Commanders, and the Eagles, I mean, give Jalen Hurts credit, 0 turnovers. So the Eagles are the better team. There's no question. They won. They deserved to win. They dominated. And the Commanders, when you look at the team, they have the young quarterback. They have some weapons on offense, but the talent level is not close to the Eagles. And they need more weapons on offense. I mean, Zach Ertz made more plays for the Commanders than anyone. They need more on offense, and as great it is to have players like Bobby Wagner and others on the defense, they're actually older on defense. And their lack of speed, I think, hurt them against Philadelphia. It'll be interesting to see how they continue to draft and build the team around Daniels, who looks like the best rookie quarterback we've ever seen. I mean, part of the success for the Eagles was they put more pressure on him. They put more pressure on him, and they were more disruptive up front. And it was just a harder game. It was a harder game, and it proved to be a little too much. But he still was very impressive. With all that we're taking into consideration, Jayden Daniels still had a good game. It's not like all of a sudden he looked like a rookie and it was too big for him. Not at all. Well, it's just the Commanders didn't protect the football. And the Eagles advance to Super Bowl, and they're going to be facing the Chiefs, which we'll be able to preview coming up the Super Bowl, but it's going to be a rematch from 2 years ago. Boy, and that seems familiar as a 49ers fan. It's even fresher because it was from 2019 to 23 that you had the two Super Bowls, and they're the same uniform matchup both times, and it's the same case this time around with the Eagles and Chiefs. But this time, only 2 years ago, same uniform matchup. And it's very important, let me say this too, that for the Eagles to get in this year, because it's a long season for Saquon Barkley. We've been giving him all the compliments and mentioning how great this single season from regular season to playoffs has been, this run for him. But to expect him to come back and do it again next year, you'd be foolish to think that. As history says, when a runner has rushed this much and then you add in, 16 regular season games because you didn't play in the last, and then you give 4 extra games, 20 games, you got to try and do it this year. Yeah, and I saw that firsthand example with Christian McCaffrey. He didn't have as good of a season as Barkley, but he had a great season. He was the offensive player of the year, and everything he does as a runner, as a receiver, he got worn down. And that's so much of what was wrong with the 49ers season. It wasn't everything, but they're very dependent on Christian McCaffrey, and he was worn out from last year, and he was overused by Kyle Shanahan. We didn't nearly have the offensive line, though, let me say that. The 49ers had a very average offensive line last year. He had as big of a season as he did. But you got to do this when Barkley's healthy for the Eagles. And, you look at, for the most part, this was a healthy football team. Every team has their injuries, and they have too, but you're looking at their best players on both sides of the football. They're there and they're healthy. Okay. Bills and Chiefs. Now, a couple of my keys that I can remember for this one was Bills, you got to score first. That's one thing. 2, you cannot be settling for field goals. You have got to be aggressive, and you have to score touchdowns. to beat the Chiefs? Well, the Bills on their first possession go 3 and out. 3 and out. And later in the first half, they were settling for field goals instead of going in for touchdowns. The Chiefs, on the other hand, went down the field with ease on their first possession. They get a touchdown. And you can't hurt yourself. It's not that you have to play a perfect game, but you can't make mistakes, but you have to capitalize. And the Chiefs could have been beaten. They could have. I mean, the crazy thing about this was, we were talking about turnovers again. The Bills did not lose the turnover battle. And they still lost. They got off to too slow of a start. They did. And Josh Allen played really well. I mean, it was shaky on that first possession. I mean, he almost could have gotten picked off, I think, 2 times. And then he settled in. And he had a great game. Great game. And he is one of the best. I mean, if we're to rank the best quarterbacks in the league, he'd be number 2 on my list. I mean, he'd be above Lamar. He'd be above Burrow right now. And I'm a huge Burrow fan. But he's not the best. He's not the best. The Chiefs and Mahomes, I mean, he has the magic. When he absolutely has his back up against the wall, he makes it work with whatever it is. Throwing, running, getting creative, improving. He's special. But the plays are great too. I mean, the plays that are drawn up where they really put defenders on an island. How often does that happen? You see something like a bootleg. You see him rolling out. And, the defenders have to make the decision. Well, am I going to try and stop him, or am I going to try and stop the receiver? It just seems the Chiefs do that over and over and over again, and it works every time. They're able to run the ball effectively. They have 2 tough runners. Rob Gronkowski did very little, but you have to, and he's not the player he was, but you have to respect him, and you can't ignore him. And the receivers are not a great group, but they were able to use Worthy and his speed. You were wondering who's going to step up for the Chiefs, but they were able to use his speed as really their number 1 target in the AFC Championship game. But I'm just looking at the 2 rosters. I'm like, okay, well, the Chiefs don't have the receivers they've had in the past. They don't have Tyreek Hill. But then you look at the Bills, and you're like, well, there's some good players on their offense, and Cook's a good runner. But there's not enough talent on offense. And one of the problems for the Bills was they didn't run the football enough. And Cook was extremely effective, and the Chiefs really didn't stop him. They didn't. And I understand you have Josh Allen, but maybe a little more balanced approach would have been better. And since the Chiefs are advancing, the fact that they were able to run the ball effectively, and they're different kinds of runners, but considering the Bills were able to run the ball as well as they did, that would have me a little concerned if I was the Chiefs. When you're going up against the Eagles and the offensive line they have, and Barkley, and the dual threat, you have to respect Hurts too. I say, well, Allen played really well. and you compare him to Mahomes, and these are the two best quarterbacks in football. But the couple of things for me, I mean, you could certainly complain about the fourth down and the placement of the ball. And according to the officials, the Bills did not get the first down. I mean, there are things in this game to complain about. But the main thing when I'm looking at it is, what does Mahomes have that Allen doesn't have? Well, he's got Andy Reid. I mean, he's just got a better head coach. He's got the best head coach going in the game, and better offensive coach, better defensive coach. And although the Chiefs are not the most stacked Super Bowl team you're going to find in history, in some positions they're a little underwhelming. I mean, when you look at the weapons, Travis Kelce, he's lost a step. He's not who he used to be. Andre Hopkins is a far cry of what he was. And the rest of the receivers, I mean, they have their different strengths, but there's no star receiver. And the running backs are both good. They get it done, but they don't strike fear into anybody. It's the defensive unit. I mean, it's just the coaching. I mean, you say the defensive talent of Chris Jones, Karlaftis, and a secondary that doesn't get enough credit. There's just a major, I just see it, that there is a major coaching advantage and a major talent advantage for the Chiefs. Bills have a good running back, but all the complementary, the weapons. The weapons that are available for the Bills are not good enough. And it would not have been, the game comes down to Josh Allen getting the football and then the Chiefs blitz. I mean, I've seen this as a 49ers fan too in the Super Bowl is, man, it just feels like Steve Spagnuolo. I mean, he just calls the right plays at the right time and dials up the right blitzes. And Allen makes a remarkable play under pressure, and then Kincaid drops the ball. Not saying it's an easy play, but it was a very catchable play. And I still feel a play that should have been made. As Bills had their chances. I mean, they played hard. I mean, they did play well. It just wasn't good enough. And although they lost on their home field last year, I mean, they got to be kicking themselves that they didn't get home field advantage again. I feel if they played the way they did, and it was in Buffalo, they would have won. But they have. I mean, this is the frustrating thing for the Bills, and it's not hard to know where they need to improve. They have a good defense, but the defense is just not good enough. They need to try and acquire another weapon for Josh Allen in the passing game. And defensively, I mean, it hurt that they had multiple guys out in the secondary. I mean, that hurt. But they need better defenders. Just at all three levels. They need better defenders. They have good guys up front with Ed Oliver and Rousseau, and, well, Von Miller's at the end of his career, but he still has some moments. And Matt Milano, I don't think ever got all the way back from his injuries, so he could be better next year. But man, you need big time players to try and bring down Mahomes, and that's the chance the Eagles have of doing it when you have Carter, you have Bond. I mean, you have the two of them really playing on such a high level. On defense, you have a very good secondary. You have the league's best defense. I mean, that's really going to give you the best shot you can. But even the Eagles are going to have to play by far their best game to beat the Chiefs. And I think it's going to be a bit startling for the Eagles because they had a fairly easy path. If you say Packers, okay. Rams, you're taking a California team and putting them in the snow. And then Commanders, who are way ahead of schedule. But it is really frustrating for the Bills because it's sort of the same for the Ravens. It's like, where do you go from here? Because you could try to trade for a big-time player. You could try to get a free agent, draft. But, I don't think they're necessarily one player away from beating the Chiefs. I mean, in some ways, they should not have beaten the Ravens. It felt more like the Ravens were making terrible mistakes. As I look at the Ravens, and I feel the Ravens have a better all-around and football team, a more dangerous football team than the Bills. I mean, they're just so dependent. I mean, you want to talk about, I'd say the Eagles are dependent on Saquon Barkley. The Bills are overly dependent on Josh Allen. And he just needs more help on offense. I mean, you have the running back, but I'm just saying, well, it was maybe not the best time to let Diggs go. And, okay, they brought in Amari Cooper, but Amari Cooper's not the receiver he was a year or two ago. He's on the decline. His career is at a very good career, but he's not an impact number one receiver. He isn't. They need more receivers, impact offensive players, and they just need generally more on defense. But where do you go from now? I mean, because again, I don't think that's an easy fix. I mean, you need to draft better. Maybe you can do something. I just don't think necessarily you're one player away. But at the same time, that's saying if the Chiefs stay where they're at. I see the Chiefs, you can't ever count them out, but this may be their best opportunity to win another. When you say and you take out some of these guys and they're going to get into their 30s, and some of them like Kelsey are a lot older than that. Mid to late 30s. This may be for now the last great chance the Chiefs have to win a Super Bowl. Of course, you always have to knock the champions off. We'll see what happens in the big game itself. But how frustrating. It was just so frustrating. I mean, still not good enough. Still need more talent on offense. Need to get better. I mean, just weren't able to get enough pressure on Patrick Mahomes. Need a little more speed on defense. And how much more time does Sean McDermott get? I mean, when is it going to be time to say he's had enough time? Because the problem is not Josh Allen. The problem is not having enough talent around him and questioning how good is the coaching. Maybe it is about time, and it's too late this year. I mean, they're not bringing a new head coach this year, but I feel Sean McDermott really only has one more season. That's all I can imagine. Josh Allen had the best season he ever had. And it's not to say they're not going for it, but how many attempts can you get? And we're not even talking about losing in the Super Bowl. I mean, that was the story in the 90s of the Bills. They just couldn't win the Super Bowl. But, the Bills they can't even, because of the Chiefs, they can't even get in. So I say one more year for Sean McDermott is all he's going to get. And then you need another receiver, and you need a little more team speed on defense. But congratulations, Chiefs. I mean, this is the first team that's ever gone for the three-peat. And now they're only one game away. I mean, they're the first team to ever actually get this far going for a three-peat. Think about teams who came short. The 90 49ers. I'd go with the 76 Steelers. The 94 Cowboys. I mean, they got close, but they didn't actually get into the Super Bowl. And I'm laughing talking about quarterback rankings and Pro Bowls and All-Pro awards. Patrick Mahomes didn't even make it on the Pro Bowl roster. I mean, we're not even talking about being an All-Pro. And sometimes it shows. I mean, it does mean something to get named to the Pro Bowl roster or the All-Pro team. But the best quarterback and still the best player in the sport is Patrick Mahomes, and he's not on. He didn't make it as Pro Bowl player or an All-Pro. Yet, he just continues to win, continues to go to Super Bowls, continues to win Super Bowls. And when the pressure's on, he gets it done. I mean, that's what you've just seen with these other teams. Almost anyone who's not the Chiefs. When the pressure is on, he's at his best. He's better than anybody else. And the Chiefs don't play tight. And the coaches don't get tight. I mean, they're just so prepared. They're so ready. And if you make a mistake, they'll make you pay for it. And the Chiefs have beat a lot of great teams, during this run. You just take last year was one of the hardest roads to win it all that I can remember. I mean, I think of the Buccaneers. And when they got in with Tom Brady, they had to go through 3 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks who are all Super Bowl MVPs to get there. Being Drew Brees. Yeah, he wasn't the same Drew Brees, but still, anyway, an older Drew Brees at the end of his career, on the road, then Aaron Rodgers, on the road, and then go through Patrick Mahomes. I mean, what Brady did was about as hard as it gets when you're just saying, okay, just say you're lining up 3 future Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You're going through Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, and Patrick Mahomes. But the one last year is one of the harder ones too. When you're looking at teams, and the Chiefs also had to go through the Bills and the Ravens on the road, and then a very good 49ers team in the Super Bowl. They had to go through Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and they found a way to win a Super Bowl in overtime. What are they going to do this year? I mean, I'm just saying, okay, Eagles, I've been there 2 times already as a 49ers fan, where everyone said, me included, well, you got the better roster. Clearly you have the better roster, you have more talent on your team, but I'll just keep saying it. The Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and you don't. And you know it. You already have played a Super Bowl where your quarterback only made, yeah, he played very well, but he only made one mistake. He fumbled. And the Chiefs played their best football in the second half of the game. You had them, yet they still won. What's going to be different this time? What's going to be different?